Alright everyone, welcome again to another episode of Meta Musings. I'm ZeroCardinality. I'm here with Sotere. Hi Sotere, how are you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. We have some drama over at the household, but overall, just really excited to talk about some meta.
Yep, so before we get started on today's topic though, I think we should talk a little bit about Nunu again because there are some changes coming.
Well, I mean, okay, there are some purported changes coming. The one thing I have to say, like, you always read about the PBE server and what changes they have coming on it. Until they're like actually listed in the patch notes for the upcoming patch, you can't be sure that they're going to be on there. But I think the new ones are pretty uncontroversial. Everyone thinks he needs a buff, so it looks like they're going to put the Visionary skill from 7 attacks down to 5 attacks, which would be huge. Of course, he gets a free spell after 7 attacks previously, now 5 attacks. So that will certainly help him out in his jungle. And I believe they're reducing the cooldown on Consume and increasing the damage on it, both of which are really essential to his counter jungling potential.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's really just, I think it was in the patch preview that Freak was talking about how they really wanted to try to get Nunu back into the jungle. And these changes are aimed at getting him back into the jungle, making him less mana dependent by lowering the number of attacks he needs for Visionary and improving Consume, so helping his clear times and his ability to counter jungle. And, I mean, we talked about before how Nunu is you could still run Nunu in the jungle, and I mean this is gonna really help him be a part of that jungle even more, and this will even help his lane presence if you want to take him mid or if you want to take him top, because I mean those things help out in lane too.
Yeah. Did I tell you about the all attack speed team? I did.
Yes,
right?
I was part of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You weren't like one of the originators with
No,
it.
no.
You're part of it eventually.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyways, that's probably something for another topic. So what are we talking about today, Zero?
Well, we started on Nunu, and Nunu's main role right now is support. So I think we should talk about supports.
Yeah, I suppose so, because Nunu for the longest time was considered, a jungler, and then when he became not a top selection for jungle, he fell out of viability. And I think it might have been after Season 2 time, I think Fnatic was kind of one of the first teams that really picked him up as a support champion, and they realized if you have someone with long enough range who really benefits from that increased attack speed from Blood Boil, he can be great, despite the fact that, of course, he doesn't have any natural sustain for his lane opponent. He does have sustain for himself through Consume, but he just has really good trading abilities with Blood Boil, with Ice Blast, but he doesn't have that healing or that shield or those other things that you would think come with a support role. So I guess the kind of question we come to is what makes a support a support?
Yeah, exactly.
And
I mean,
maybe you can fill us in on that.
well, I mean, we've discussed this before, and really, I mean, one of the things people like to do is think of unusual supports to play. We've seen, support fiddle in pro play. We've seen support gangplank as a common unusual support. I mean, as you said, Nunu used to be an unusual support. We've seen a ton of unusual sports, and people just like doing it because, I mean, it's one of those roles where you really, I mean, it seems like anybody could go there. Anybody who has the ability to do stuff without items. I think I've also seen stuff like support LeBlanc, where you try to kill the enemy laners and stuff like that. But I mean, you can't really just put anybody there because, of course, there's going to be better supports and there are going to be worse supports. So in finding unusual supports, we should really figure out what we want in a support. So there are a couple main things that you're looking for in a support. You're looking for lane presence. So you're looking for somebody that might heal, or that might be able to shield, or that might be able to poke, or do other things. Like, for example, Nunu's Snowball, it not only is a good method of poking, but it's great for trades because it slows attack speed. So when you Snowball the enemy AD carry, that means your AD carry just wins that trade automatically because their attack speed is slowed by so much. So it's that kind of thing that you're looking for in terms of lane presence. Also, you are looking for a late game presence, so in, say, team fights. And this is important because you won't have items. You might have, your Philosopher's Stone, maybe a Heart of Gold, maybe getting some ore items such as Zeke's Herald or Aegis, and stuff like that, but you really won't have much in terms of items, so they need to be able to still function in team fights without these items. And I
Mm.
think the second part is where people don't. Pe- people's when they try to get unusual supports, they kind of overlook the second part because, for example, a support LeBlanc would not do very well in the late game because without items, LeBlanc can't do enough damage to burst somebody down. Whereas in the early game, the base damage just might be high enough to actually burst somebody down. So it's things like this you have to think about. You won't have the items, so you want a champion that has the ability to do well both in the early game and the late game. So I think, I mean, to illustrate this, I think we should go to one of Sotir's favorite champions,
Yeah,
and
I think the ideal version of a champion. I think the only support champion that Riot actually, is happy with, and by happy with, I want to say like they've always been like, okay, she's been our great success as a support champion. She doesn't sustain too much in lane to be, really toxic to the environment, where you're like, oh, I don't even want to trade in lane because you're just gonna be healed up in a couple of seconds. Um, she promotes aggressive playstyle while giving a little bit of defensive sustain, and she just doesn't really need the item to scale and do a great job late game. I believe Free called her the ticking time bomb of a support because if you don't really stomp her in lane, she just outshines all the other supports in team fights. So if you would please, I mean, she is my champion, but she's your champion as well, Zero. So tell us why she is kind of this ideal support.
well, okay, so let's look at our parts again. So, in lane presence, she has her shield, which is great. It gives shield for trades, and it gives extra attack damage until it's broken. She has her knockup, which is a good method of CC. She has her slow, and she has, when she reaches 6, she has her ultimate, which can really help peel for your AD carry if he gets in trouble. And I mean, it's great for the lane because I mean, Janna is great at saving the AD carry from dying. She has all of these abilities to help her AD carry stay alive in lane, and this goes to the late game too. All of her abilities are great for team fights. She has that AOE knockup with the Howling Gale. She has a reset button on her ultimate, which can just blow everybody away. She has a slow, and she has a shield for the AD carry, which would, when at level 5, adds what, a BF sword worth of damage. So
Yep.
that's a ton of utility both in lane and in team fights, which is why Janna is such a great support. And you don't really need that many items for her to be able to do this kind of stuff. I mean, having AP helps, which is why AP Janna is actually a thing. But I mean, she doesn't necessarily need those items to make it work.
Mhm. And I think a great portion or great thing about her is that she can work so well from range. There's a lot of champions that I love, but that are more melee based. Taric, Leona, Blitzcrank, but they all require you actually getting into the thick of things. Whereas Janna can be a true support, really doesn't need those items because she can stand from really far away, stand behind the support or behind the AD carry rather, and knock people up and slow them down and shield the AD carry. And when it comes to it, blow them off of the AD carry, and she can do almost, use all of her kit from 500, 800 range behind the AD carry. So when you play Taric and Blitzcrank and even Alistar, yes, you're great. You have a lot of great utility, but on the same side, you really want to pick up those items. You want to pick up that like Frozen Heart, for instance, things that allow you to stay with in the battle and stay on those front lines. Whereas Janna really doesn't even need that, and that's what's so great about her, in my opinion. She just brings so much utility without any items at all. You could literally not buy anything, and she would still be okay. Whereas a lot of the other supports do want items. They do scale incredibly well with items, and they have skills that scale well with items. Soraka is kind of a good example where you don't really need the items, but she actually does scale superbly well with AP. and there's only so much she can do in a team fight. And I think when you talk about supports, you're kind of always going against Soraka because for the past 2 years she's been one of the ideal supports. Always has a high win ratio in solo queue and in competitive play. She's great. She's very simple and straightforward, but she does her job well as well, and that's in large part because of that armor buff her heals give, and because of the heals. Um, but she doesn't have the fight resetter like Janna. She doesn't have the control that Janna does in those team fights. But I think we kind of, wax poetic about the usual supports, and the whole point of this Meta Musings is to talk about unusual supports. So who are we first going to examine that we feel brings these utilities without these items, but can bring it both in lane and, like you said, in those late game team fights?
I actually want to go back to what you said about the whole not being in melee range, because this is not an example of a good unusual support, but when I first saw Sejuani, I wasn't a big fan of her in jungle, so I thought, could it be possible for her to be as a support, because she has that ultimate, which is a good AoE stun, and she looks like she would provide utility with her slows. But the problem is she's a melee champion, and that is going to really hurt her in lane because she really won't be able to do much. I mean, she might be able to, hide in the brush and maybe, dash onto someone, but it's pretty easy to counter that with a ward, and really you're really not going to be doing much as a support in lane with Sejuani. And a large part of that is because of her lack of range. She has to get in melee range, and really that puts her in a lot of danger in order to do that. And she has to get tanky in order to get in melee range later in the game too. I mean, she might throw out that ultimate, and that might be enough, but I mean, it would be really tough for her.
Yeah, and while we're on that, I would actually like to talk about this just for a brief moment. A champion that Riot really put some attention into, some thought into, kind of one of my favorite design champions. Like, the theory and the concept behind the champion is just brilliant, but doesn't excel just because she is melee, and that's Leona. Like, Leona is great. She's brilliant. Like, they knew exactly what they were doing with her. They're like, we need a champion who has a lot of CC, who's not going to get farm. We're making her for this 0 CS support role quite clearly, because we're giving her, a passive that only other people can trigger and do extra damage. So she has a buttload of CC, beg my language, pardon my language, but she has all this CC, but she has to get into battles. Zenith Blade puts her towards the enemy. She has to actually be next to her opponent to land the Q. And all these things are great. She has such great initiation, but even like the best players in solo queue, people who main her, like Muffin Cutie for instance, I think they have like a 54, maybe 55% win ratio with her, whereas people who main Soraka and main Janna, they can actually get up to like 60, 65% win ratios. And that's a big difference, and I think that's in large part because Leona, despite all of her bonuses, all of her benefits, all of the things that people were like, okay, well, this is what Riot thinks we need to give a champion to make them viable in the melee, CC support role. Despite all that, the fact that she has to get in there makes her lose more, well, I mean, not more often than not, but more than the other supports do. And Taric also suffers from the same thing. And in Blitzcrank, the thing about Blitzcrank, the reason he doesn't suffer is because he pulls people towards him, so he's bringing the battle to him, which means he's in melee, but he's only in melee if one person who's getting focused, if you do everything right. So anyways, there's kind of like the dichotomy between range champions and melee champions. Melee champions do have extra tools. Leona has her W, which gives her I think 80 extra magic resistant armor for a decent amount of time.
I believe
Taric,
it's
of course,
70,
has Shatter.
70,
is it 70?
army and
Okay.
magic resist. And I mean, one thing to point out is that these melee supports do have, I mean, for example, Taric has his armor, Alistar has his ultimate. So these melee champions have these extra defenses, whether it's the Alistar ultimate or it's the extra armor or the extra magic resist that they get from their abilities. And that actually works really well with them because support items tend to have health. So because of the extra armor or the extra magic resist that they get, they scale better with health. So getting more health is more beneficial, which is great because you have things like Shrelia's Reverie, you have the Heart of Gold, and these are all support items. Even Zeke's Herald. So these and Aegis of the Legion too. So these are items that give you, well, actually Aegis gives you more than that, but it also gives you health. Aegis gives you everything you would ever want.
Everything you'd ever want.
But I mean, yeah, these support items all have health in them. So that's basically how they're designed. They get these health items and they scale well with health. They have the extra health and they don't necessarily need to buy the items for armor and magic resist because they have their abilities, which increases their armor and magic resist and makes them tankier.
Mm-hmm.
So, you do have a good point though that melee champions seem to, yeah, there's a dichotomy between the melee champions and the ranged champions, and it's partly because I think it's partly because if you have a ranged support, you're never going to you're never going to focus that ranged support because it's simply not worth it, because you're going to have to try to catch up to that support, and if they're ranged, they can use their abilities from a range, so they don't have to be in the middle of everything. And if you have a support that goes into the middle of a team like Leona, they're not as tanky as true tanks that might go top or in the jungle might be, because they don't have the gold for the items to get those tanky items. So they're not going to be able to tank blows as well as the top or the jungle champions are. Mm-hmm. So, that might result in them dying more. And one of the things about Leona is that if you get behind, you're going to have a hard time catching up, because your entire goal is to jump into a team, and if you're behind, you're just going to get exploded really quickly. So, it's really tricky playing behind with Leona. While, for other supports, maybe like a Soraka or Janna, you can still use your Tornado from afar, you can use your heals to heal your teammates, and that doesn't really put you in too much danger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. And going back to the Muffin Cutie example, I actually pulled up their profile. 54% win ratio with Leona, 64 with Janna, 63 with Soraka. And most games played with Leona. It's just, despite the fact that you can practice with them over the course of hundreds of games, they just have this innate susceptibility to being killed when they get into melee range. And not only is that an issue, at lower levels of play, but actually when you get more experience, when you go up in elo, I feel like it's even worse, because the more your opposition knows how to farm, the further ahead they're going to be than a support, because support's not relying on farm. And people always tell me, oh, well, it sucks to be a support at low elo, and that's halfway true. It sucks because you can't really carry your games, but what you can do is you're suddenly stronger than you are at higher elo. Because when you're playing support at higher elo, everyone else has 200 farm, you have 0. When you're playing at lower elo, they have 130 farm, and you have 0 farm. So there's 70 farm difference there. That is, pretty standard, I would think. As you go up in elo, people just farm so much more, and that actually makes them be able to burst down people better. And of course, they're going to be able to get to the melee champions so much easier. So yeah, again, we've kind of gotten back on the track to normal ones. And
well, it is important to talk about these normal ones too, because you're really looking at what makes a good support, and looking at the dichotomy between the melee champions and the range champions is important, because that might mean for unusual supports you probably wouldn't consider a melee one, because you're already at somewhat of a disadvantage in terms of supports by choosing an unusual one. A melee unusual champion as a support will have a very tough time doing well, which is why, for example, a champion like Sejuani might not work very well as a support.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it is interesting because we really want to start with these regular supports when we're going off to our unusual ones. So I think what you wanted to do was have a new unusual support every show to begin just like a little segment. Do you still?
I would like to do that.
All right, so we'll do that. But I think
we talk about a new one every time.
Yeah. So how about we talk about one today then, and we'll leave off the rest until future shows.
Oh man, okay. One today. That's going to narrow it down as to what we're going to pick. So I will leave it to you.
Oh,
you are the showmaster general. And I will extol the virtues and then tell you why you're bad.
All right. right. How about we start with one that I think you've researched quite a bit because this is our first one, and this is the support Anivia.
Oh my goodness. Oh wow. No, no. I told you we got to keep it, somewhat viable to not
Well,
lose.
I mean, I think we should.
the
I mean, I
show.
think it still bears discussion because, I mean, even if they're not completely viable, you could still talk about it, and it could still be interesting to see why they're not viable if they're not viable, and I don't know. I think it could work.
It,
I think
it
it could work.
it definitely could work. I did it a couple of times this past week. I think first on accident, and then I was like, "Oh, this could work." Where it did work, kind of unusually, where Anivia would be the only support that worked. For instance, is against a top lane Olaf or against a jungle Olaf. Of course, they have their ultimate, which is going to negate all forms of CC, so it makes Janna really kind of, you know, worthless in a team fight against an Olaf. They'll just keep on charging in there. They'll ignore the Howling Gale. They'll ignore the Monsoon, and they'll burst through that shield really quick because the shield isn't very powerful. But Anivia can, completely block off the AD carry. And when I was playing it, I actually did happen to go up against some Olafs, and the shield was effective. I would just put it right in between the Olaf and my AD carry, and suddenly my AD carry would have a lot of breathing room, more breathing room than I could essentially grant with any other support. So that is one bonus. The other bonuses Anivia has is she has good base damage. Of course, everyone knows Anivia for Froggen playing her, and he'll go a number of unusual builds, rushing Warmogs, going, at the Holy Grail, going,
I think
Revolt.
Holy Grail isn't that unusual. It's almost like a usual item now.
Yeah, that's true. But I think he would go Chalice like back in the day before that even existed. Essentially, he would go like very minimal AP and go straight into tank, and then late game turn it back around into an AP build. And so that's kind of what makes Anivia decent bottom lane, is that she has a really high base damage rather, and she has a good amount of CC. Of course, her Q, I believe it's not Frostbite. Frostbite is her E. Flash Frost, I think, is her Q.
Mm-hmm.
It has a stun attached to it. Of course, it's a skill shot. It's a relatively slow moving skill shot, so you have to land that. She has the slow from her ultimate. I really like her passive in the sense that you can always bait out fights. Like, people always want to kill you, and then they turn you into an egg, and suddenly your attack damage carry has more time to wail on them, where they have to make this choice: do we go after the support or do we go after the AD carry? And it's a tricky call to make. So I guess those are some of the good things she brings to the table. That double life, the CC, the high base damage, and the wall, which can really turn games around. And commentators have been mentioning that forever in competitive gaming. Oh, that wall is so effective, can be so great for team fights, especially in the jungle where you cut off half the team. So of course, support Anivia can bring that to your team, has all those options. I think where she falls off is kind of where we want to focus more on. Why might you not want to bring her into that bottom lane? And perhaps you can enlighten us, Zero.
Well, I mean, I think you'd know that better than I would, but
Okay.
I mean, I've actually never played support Anivia before, so I mean, to me, it seems like she's like the best support ever. But
She has a stun, a smoke, base damage, a wall that completely blocks people off. It is crazy how good she is.
Well, I mean, one of the big things I might see a problem with is her mana. Which she would. I mean, she's not going to get blue buff because that's going to go to your mid. The support, very rarely gets blue buff, so she might have a problem with that. But the thing is, I mean, getting a chalice on a support isn't the most unusual thing in the world. I mean, I used to, way back in the day, when Sona was OP, I sometimes got a chalice on Sona after a couple items because I like to spam the spells. So I mean, it's. Chalice it's fairly cheap, and it gives a great source of mana. So I mean, I don't know. Have you tried Chalice on support Anivia?
I don't think I ever built Chalice. I think I did the usual ones because you're kind of put, well, not in between a rock and a hard place, but you're put in a difficult situation where you can build Philosopher's Stone, which gives you a good amount of mana regeneration. or you can build Chalice. But the thing about Philosopher's Stone, of course, is it's giving you passive gold as well. And Chalice is great, but a lot of Anivia's, they rely on not only Chalice, but they get Chalice and blue buff, or Chalice and Tier and blue buff. So you have all of these things, because you never can have too much mana as Anivia. But bottom lane, is Chalice going to do it itself? I don't know. Since you're not farming all the time, you don't need to spam your R. You don't need to spam your ultimate to, spam down the minion waves and get all those minions, which certainly cuts down on your mana costs. But once you get into those battles, how much mana regeneration do you need? Is Philosopher's Stone going to be enough? Or are you going to need that Chalice? If you get the Chalice, you're getting a little bit of, defensive stats from that magic resistance. You're getting that mana regeneration. But, the mana regeneration kicks in when you're really low in mana, more so than it does when you're high in mana. And at that point, you may just be losing the battle because you're running out. So it is tricky. The other thing I really don't like about her is she does have a ranged attack and from really great range, which is very nice, but she's very slow. I guess
Yes.
also are slow, but she just seems slower than everyone. I think she actually used to have 295 move speed, and they buffed it, and I think it might be at 305 now. But she actually was like the slowest champion in the game. They kept on increasing it.
Actually, that's
So
one of the
now
great
she's-
things about support Janna. She has her passive to make her not as slow, and she's actually, she has decent speed.
Playing as like Lulu or basically anyone except Janna and Nunu, I just feel like I'm moving really slow. And Blitzcrank, of course, has a movement speed bonus as well through his overdrive. So if I'm not one of those, I'm like, oh my goodness, I have to buy Boots of Mobility just to get around the map a little bit quicker to bird. And because I think supports probably move around the map more than everyone except a jungler in the early stages of the game, because everyone else is kind of just in their lane. They're within like, 10 meters to the left, 10 Timos to the right. They stay in that little zone. But a support, they're in their lane. They're doing the back and forth in the lane. But they also have to run up towards Dragon, run up towards the brush, ward that. So of course jungler is getting around, but the support is getting around. Probably the second most after that.
Yeah, one of the things that I really like doing is getting Boots of Mobility on Nunu with an Oracles and just running around the map killing wards, and nobody can catch me. So
it's not a bad idea.
yeah, so I like doing that. But yeah, going back to Anivia, she is very slow, and that's one of the problems with her as an AP carry too. Her being so slow. But yeah, I mean, these are. I mean, it's not like, of course she's not going to be the perfect support, but I mean, I still think, again, I haven't tried it out yet, so I should probably check into that. But
With full judgment until you've tried it.
yeah.
I think the other 2 points, and I don't think we've talked about them too much. We did talk about one, which is what can you do for me in lane? Now, she has decent poke with her auto attack. She has decent poke with her like Q to E. The problem is if she really wants to be a support or Anivia, you might want to level her W over her damaging spells, because at early levels the shield or the wall is actually not very far across. So you want to level that up ASAP. So your damage will suffer from that, and her laning will therefore not be quite as strong. But of course she's not healing the AD carry, so if the AD carry missteps and doesn't have a good trade, then suddenly they're going to fall behind. And I think the other important part that I don't even think we touched on, we mentioned how Janna can help people out, but what can the support do for the AD carry at late game? Like, not how can they protect them, but what can they actually do for them? And that's kind of where Nunu and Janna really, really shine, because Nunu gives a 65% attack speed bonus, a 15% movement speed bonus. Janna gives a 50, extra attack damage. Sona has a bunch of auras that are going for her. Soraka grants a lot of armor and some healing for them. Anivia, despite, the presence in lane, despite the CC she's bringing, she actually doesn't give anything directly to the attack damage carry for their ability to do damage later on in the game, which is very, very important.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is going to be a common theme with these unconventional supports, because they're not going to have these abilities that increase attack damage or attack speed. I mean, some unconventional supports do, like Gangplank, maybe Jarvan, but I mean, in general, you're not going to have these abilities. So you have to think about, is the wall worth it? Is being able to separate your AD carry from, say, their Olaf worth not giving your AD carry the attack damage bonus or the attack speed bonus? and are the slows worth giving up some of the auras that Sona might have, and things like that. So yeah, I mean it's really a trade-off, and I mean there's probably a good reason why these champions aren't used as supports mostly, but I think it's in terms of viability. I mean, I still have to try her out, but I mean, I could see how it would work in terms of
Mhm.
viability. Not necessarily in terms of optimal play, maybe, but yeah, I mean, I really like that wall. Is what I
The,
think.
the wall is really good, and it kind of does something unique. I mean, I guess you could put like support Trundle down there, but even Trundle's pillars aren't generally as good as those walls, and completely stealing someone off from the battle. Of course, you can always flash over it. Um,
I mean,
I
it's
think
great for if a jungler ganks your lane. You can just wall them off, and if they have flash, then you force them to blow their flash, or if they don't have flash, you probably get a kill there.
right. Yeah, so that's certainly a bonus for them. And I think one thing we're gonna have to talk about as well, I think we probably should discuss it now because like we're going to talk about unconventional supports, and that's going to be a running theme in Meta Musings because it'll just be unique and interesting and something that people should give more thought into. Almost 100 champions in the league, most of them can be used as support, not optimal. But we're going to discuss which ones are more optimally used there, which ones can be viable in that position.
Also, we both main
Uh,
supports, so I mean.
yeah, we love supports. So we're not just shooting from the hip. We actually have some background here. We're not like we don't want to punish the AD carries. We're not like we hate AD carries. Let's pick the worst support we can and bring them bottom lane and try to steal their farm. No, we're going with the general like zero CS meta. Where we're going to give all the farm to our AD carry, and we want to help them out as much as we can because Zero and I are nice guys. We're like, hey, we want to win, we want to help our AD carry, but we don't want to always do it in the most conventional manners. We want to see what else we can do, stretch those boundaries, kind of change the way the game is played, which is the point of the whole show. But before we get into all these other supports, which we will get into in our following shows, there are certain champions that are safer to use in these combinations than others. So certain AD carries, I think that you can kind of get away with it better. The one that comes to mind is Caitlyn because she essentially has enough poke on her own and defense through those traps and defense through 90 caliber net where she can get away and she can stay in lane where she can poke in lane even without the help of a healing support, the traditional healing support. I can also think of Ezreal as being a pretty good person who can pick up those CS from really long range, Corki as well. So I think that's kind of an interesting topic. If you are going to go in conventional supports, who do you want to go with? You might not want to go with an Ashe, for instance, who has no escape, who doesn't really excel in lane in those early game trades.
Yeah, and especially with the Nivea, you probably don't want to go with an Ashe because I mean, the slows are redundant then, and
Right.
I mean it's nice to have slows, but Ashe is going to
Well,
provide the slow utility that the Anivia wants to provide. So, and it's not or I mean, of course, we're not really talking about the most optimal combinations here, but you want to stay away from a champion like Ashe if you're going to pair it with a support Anivia.
yeah, well, it used to be that Ashe's arrows would allow Anivia to do full damage on Frostbite, or essentially double damage on Frostbite. So the like Anivia Nunu combo and the Ashe Nunu combo, or Ashe Anivia combo, used to actually be really good. I don't think that kind of quirky feature is still in the game, unfortunately. And I've actually heard the same. Like people are like, oh, why would you want to put Ashe and Nunu together in a lane? They both can slow. Well, Nunu slows a little bit better early game and scales that snowball before Ashe scales her Q, her frost shot up. So while there is certainly some redundancy in a lot of these matchups, it doesn't necessarily always go to waste. And that's something to keep in mind. But we have a lot of these supports that we do want to go over in the future. This was kind of just our brief taste of unconventional supports, and we wanted to kind of open the panel, and then we'll move forward in the future. Not going over it as in depth as we are here, but certainly touching base on it every single show. Certainly tune into us. We are going to be doing this every week at 9 p.m. Eastern. Are we pretty set on that, Zero?
Yep, I think we are.
All right, so instead of going out Friday nights, stay in here, watch Meta Musings.
Oh, everybody's all playing League of Legends on Friday nights anyway, so I mean, might as well listen to us while you play, or instead of playing. because you want to look at our faces. I think
Yeah,
that's an important part. And at Janna, I just noticed I had Janna up while we were talking about Anivia.
yes. You can never get too much Jana. She is the epitome of awesomeness and all great things. I guess she's getting nerfed, and that's gonna make me cry. But I mean, she's gotten nerfed a number of times. I've taken my lumps. I've rolled with them. You're gonna keep playing her. Keep playing her until the end.
I've actually started liking Leona more, despite her not according to you, her shortcomings by being a melee champion.
I mean, I love her, but I just like if you can find me someone who's winning like 65% of their games at high elo with her, then I'll be impressed. And at high elo, like winning 55% of your games is really impressive. It's just actually as support players can win more than just about any other role. If they play well and if they pick Janna. or even Soraka. There's actually a lot of really high level Soraka players that win a high majority of their games. And it's just something to be said about that range support position. Not that I agree with it or think it should be that way, and I think I'll have to actually review these notes. I guess the official notes have come out, and I just noticed those now. But they'll probably nerf those ranged support champions, and maybe bring to the forefront the melee ones, because of course it's not always what you can do for your team, but what can you do better than the support you're against in any given matchup.
Yep. So that is all for today. That was our introduction to our unconventional supports. We'll have a running series. We'll begin each show with small discussion about one unconventional support before moving on to another topic. So look forward to that. Thanks for listening today, and again, catch us every Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And yeah, thanks for watching.
Yes. Thank you for tuning in. We're going to have the GG Classic coming up in almost a week now, so we might as well rep that as well. GG Classic, July 14th and 21st, all throughout both of those weekends. All your favorite teams from around the globe, not just an American tournament now. We're going to have some European teams in there. We're going to have Taipei Assassins in there, so it is really an international event. Tune in for that. GG Classic, once again, July 14th and 21st, both of those weekends. We'll be going through. We should be the major tournament of the weekend, both weekends.
Yep, and we both are casters for it, so you'll be able to catch us then too. Although you won't see our lovely faces then.
Oh dear, oh dear.
You'll be watching the game while we, cast it for you. But never fear, you can catch our faces every Friday.
Thank goodness. Well, it was good to see you again, Zero. I always cherish the moments that I get you on screen. Of course, people ask questions if we have video running while we're in game. So, and it's so tempting just to alt tab, and people are like, "Oh, why aren't you last hitting?" Oh, just staring at Zero. Just staring at Zero. So yes, for these moments where it's acceptable, I appreciate it so very much, so very much. No
well, I'm glad you appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for watching, and have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Now this is the awkward moment where I'm not sure how long to let the delay go.
The 30-second after show.
Is it 30 seconds? Wasn't it 90 seconds before?
I think we cut it down after people stopped caring.
Okay. Well, this could be, if any of it goes on, then this can be a little Easter egg that people can watch.
Yes, people were messaging, why not Kale? Kale's not even unconventional. She's standard support, but I like her.
Wait, who messaged you?
Just people. People who watch the show. Friends of the show.
People.
Just people. I want to give them a shout out. That was Dank Spade. It's kind of I don't know, I don't think they were even with us with the community showings. More recent friend who happened to catch on for whatever reason.
Oh, we need to